Hello, this is going to be my review for the third episode of The Mandalorian, which I believe is called The Sin. Um, and I'm really happy with these episodes so far because I've been waiting for a Star Wars like this since the '80s, and I just love the level of grit and I don't want to say how I love the dirty Star Wars so much because I said it like 8,000 times in the last video, but I just love the darkness of it. It's almost like the Chris Nolan Batman equivalent of Star Wars. Like Star Wars and its cheesiness and its goofy political posturing was getting out of control, like back in the 90s when Batman was getting out of control. This is like the return to grit in Chris Nolan style. And man, I like the even though it's gritty and dark, I like that it has a certain amount of emotional weight because like in the previous episodes, the main character had to save this or he didn't really save it. He collected it. He collected like this little baby alien, and he's kind of grown attached to it. I like how in previous episodes he was talking to the like there's this blacksmith character who's like this priestess blacksmith of some sort, and I like how they talk about, oh, we're saving the foundlings. I'd like to donate this portion of the Beskar steel to sponsor foundlings, and it's like the main character is an orphan, obviously at one point in time, and he has this special affinity for parentless children, and it's like I like the contrast of how he's this dark, this guy that hangs around in the seediest places and deals with the seediest people, but he's got a little warmth in his heart for saving the children because he was a child, and I like the weight of that. Like there's like it's almost like they're constantly on a scale, and they're fighting over his how he's gonna make his decisions. I feel like it's so beautifully done. Man, this puppet character, they did a really good job of making its face really expressive, and when it came time for him to turn in this baby Yoda creature to the Empire, and who obviously seems like really creepy, and they're up to no good. But the way that the little puppet creature was like expressive, and it's like it's like it hits you right in the heart. It's like, what are you doing? You're giving this little baby Yoda creature to these guys? What are you doing? Like they had so much weight. And then when he gave the creature to the Empire and he was flying away earlier in the episode, the little baby like unscrewed a piece of his control panel, and then like after that heart pulling on your heartstrings scene where the Yoda creature was like, "You're giving me away to these guys," and he was trying to fly away to go to his next mission, and he reaches for the knob where the baby creature unscrewed, and like there's just so much power. Like they express so much in these tiny little gestures, and god damn it, it's well done. I love how Spock I love Mr. Spock from Star Trek. He's one of the greatest characters that I know of, and I love how these like the Mandalorian culture is so like they emotionlessly devote their lives and their philosophy to this warrior code, and like all emotions kind of go out the window except for like one of the interesting things about Spock was that he was supposed to be completely emotionless, but he wasn't. Like the interesting thing about Spock was he was constantly like the logical side of his personality was constantly struggling with the emotional human side, and he was supposed to be emotionless, but there were always times when his emotion could creep in. Like the expertise of Leonard Nimoy was that he was supposed to be emotionless, but he expressed the fact that his emotions were invading his consciousness, and that's what was happening here. Like the main character was put in these character testing situations where, you know, he was supposed to be like Mr. Spock, where he was emotionlessly devoting his life to this warrior code, but he was an orphan, and he had this orphan that he felt sympathy for, and it was just so cool how, like, his emotions were creeping in. It's like, my affection for this orphan are compromising my, not only my warrior code, but my bounty hunting code. And, like, just the balance of those two things struggling was just, it had so much weight, and it was just so interesting. What else do I want to say about this? I feel like in this episode, I felt he did kind of feel a little bit more like Batman, because, I mean, he did have a gun. Batman doesn't use a gun. But he was just, like, sneaking around and like, using stealth, and I thought that was kind of cool. I feel like the Mandalorian, he seems like he wins all the gunfights kind of seemingly easily. But, in this one, he didn't really so much as win. Like, he was doing really well up until the last moment. And finally, like, he got help from another character. I'm glad it wasn't the Baby Yoda character, because like I was saying in the last review, I'm not sure if I like the fact that this baby can use the Force so easily at a young age, and it kind of saved him in the previous episode. But this Baby Yoda didn't help him at all, and I thought that was good. And I noticed that, like, the Baby Yoda creature, it does use the Force, but when it does, it seems like it's emotionally taxed. It gets exhausted. It gets, you know, once it strains itself with the Force, it is out. And I kind of like that, but what about when it's an adult and it has like more practice, and it's more focused, it has more ability? I'd like for the Force to expend energy and tire people out. I feel like that's a good compromise for this amazing godlike power. Mandalorians kind of remind me of Batman and James Bond, because they have all these gadgets, and the priestess armorer lady gave him this special power, and it was almost like Q from James Bond, and he did use the power to get out of a jam. And I feel like one of the criticisms of James Bond is that he always gets into a situation and he always uses the magic gadget that Q gave him to get out of that gadget, and it almost seems like it's that Deus Ex Machina, where God comes down and gets you out of your problem. There was a little bit of that in this episode, but I kind of liked that the Mandalorian didn't just expertly win. He needed to be saved. What else? Even though there is a little bit of that, I'm not even sure if I'm saying this right. I don't speak Latin. Deus Ex Machina, where the hand of God, I believe, is what it means. The hand of God comes down and saves your main character. There was a little bit of that, but he didn't win. He didn't so much as get himself out of the problem, and there was enough emotional character testing elements of this that kind of, I felt like they made me forgive the fact that other people just came in and solved his problems for him. So that didn't bother me that much. I like Carl Weathers' character. Like, I like how he's an older guy, and he seems like he fit in the Star Wars universe, because, like, I feel like the Star Wars universe, a lot of the people, they look like they came from my dad's generation. Like, they got the porn stash, and it just fit with Star Wars. It was like, yeah, maybe that's not cool to people these days in our current contemporary culture, but they were consistent. They were sticking with it. This is Carl Weathers. He's a guy that he lives in the Star Wars universe. He's following the style code of someone his age in this universe, and I liked how consistent that was. I like Carl Weathers because he was I don't know, he's interesting. Like, I don't know, I think I didn't like Samuel L. Jackson in whatever movie he was in, because I feel like he had this reputation of being a bad motherfucker in just about every movie he was in. But there's just something like 80s. I wonder about the cultures. Like, you know, you have in Star Wars, you have English accent white people, you have American accent people, and I find it interesting that, you know, there's certain aliens who have their alien language, but some of them speak English perfectly, and it's just like, I wonder what the delineation of different cultures and races is, because like Carl Weathers, he didn't speak in a more colloquial way like Lando Calrissian. Like, his accent was almost like it was very like the way he spoke was very formal, and it was very it wasn't an English accent. It was almost like transatlantic from the 40s. Like, he had a very formal way of speaking, and it's just like, I wonder what his background is. Like, he's definitely mingling with the seedier side of the Star Wars universe, but it's almost like he almost speaks with the formal upper crust type of accent that you would see in Obi-Wan Kenobi or Qui-Gon Jinn. I don't know. I just find him to be interesting, and also the fact that he was like kind of like a chess player in the final scene when he was like making negotiations for the surrender of the Mandalorian, and they were going back and forth, and the Mandalorian was trying to make an escape in this speeder, and the droid was making its escape, or the droid was driving the speeder, and they're making their escape, and all the other dumb bounty hunters were just shooting at the you know, the speeder, which seemed to be bulletproof, and Carl Weathers was just like, I'm shooting the driver, and then he took out the driver and prevented their escape. Like, I just like how he makes you wonder, like, why this guy stands out from the rest of these other goofball bounty hunters. What else do I want to talk about? I feel like the music is growing on me. A lot of people said the music was bad, and at first I felt like it didn't really fit. It just felt like a Jim Henson soundtrack. But now it's like growing on me. Like, it just feels like it fits now. Like, my bathtub was dripping, and it was going bloop, bloop, bloop while I was in the bathroom, and I was just like, just started whistling the tune of the episode of the series. I don't know. It's starting to implant its roots in my brain, and I like it. I like a lot of the you know, the drumming, and like there's this heartbeat type of drum rhythm that goes in through a lot of the intense action scenes. That kind of reminds me of The Dark Knight. Like the Dark Knight had a soundtrack that was just like pulsing, and it just felt like a heartbeat, and it was like, it just added to the intensity of what was happening. What else do I want to talk about? I feel like there was one more thing. I talked about the music. I talked about Carl Weathers. I talked about Vulcans. I don't know. I think the reason I didn't like some of the music in a previous episode is because, not because it was bad, or not because it was out of key or out of time or anything. It just sounded like there was one part where they were riding these blurgs, and they were jumping over the cracks in the soil and the landscape. Excuse me. And then like the blurgs just seemed so slow and plodding, but the music was so exciting, and it almost sounded like the Rocky theme, where you go. It sounded kind of like, it reminded me of that, and it was so exciting, but what was happening on the screen was just bloop, 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 and it just, I don't know. I guess I thought it was bad because of that. Anyway, I feel like I give this one an A+. Oh, I think I remember what I was going to talk about. There was this, I don't know who Anita Sarkeesian is. I guess she is like some kind of public speaker, like, who hates men or something. But she was complaining about how like there weren't enough women. She said initially she said there were no women in it. Like, she didn't even watch the thing. And one of the main characters is a woman. And I don't know. It was just weird how she was. It just seemed like she was trying to get attention by saying, "Oh, there are no women." But you know what? The setting of this story is like the gritty, dark, seedy underworld, and it's just like you. I don't think you would see very many women there. I do open mic comedy, and a lot of the open mics that you go to as an open mic comedian are seedy bars with drunks and weirdos and drug addicts and townies. You don't see women there very much. Like maybe you'll see like one or two that come in occasionally. It's like if you can't even get female comedians to go to these seedy bars where open mics are, I feel like the probability that you're gonna see them where slimy smugglers and bounty hunters and murderers would hang out, very improbable. So I feel like Anita Sarkeesian is just trying to get attention. But anyway, there was like one of the most important characters, like the seemingly, I don't know what rank she was, but she was definitely higher than the Mandalorian, and he was subservient to her. But yeah, I feel like some of these man-hating critics are doing too much. They're trying to get attention by doing their same old "I hate men, men. They're responsible for the evils of the world." Shut up. Like I don't know. I don't want to go on a whole tirade about this, but it's just like every male character in every sitcom ever is just a bungling moron, and every female character is always right and smart and sassy. It's like, do men go crying about that? We can't even have the Boy Scouts. The girls are allowed to have the Girl Scouts. Boys are not allowed to have the Boy Scouts. Girls can have the Girl Scouts. Only girls are allowed. Boy Scouts, nope. Everybody's got to get in. You can't even call yourself the Boy Scouts. You're the Scouts. Like men don't cry about stuff like this. I don't know. Anyway, I give it an A+. I hope there are more episodes like this. I guess that's all I gotta say. Goodbye.